Welcome back to the channel. We got Tampon Tim and the Somali Pirates. Brett Cooper, don't forget to smash that like button and get subscribed if you're new around here. And we'll begin.
Start when I come in from the ads, because I was losing it, and I just had some water and took a deep breath. God, I can do that again. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh, she got out the whiteboard.
Because this is way too hard, Max. I'm never doing this again. So over Thanksgiving, Donald Trump put out a post on X calling Tim Walz retarded, and the entire country laughed. And then...
I mean, it's like calling a fish a fish. It's just true.
And we learned why he said that, because under Tim Walz's administration in Minnesota, Somalis have allegedly been defrauding hundreds of millions of dollars from taxpayers to allegedly pay terrorists back in Somalia. And Democrats have been sweeping it under the rug for years, but not anymore, because this...
Yeah, it's not hundreds of millions, it's billion up to maybe even 8 billion at its most. Insanity.
This is officially national news. This is just an insane story, and I feel like it is getting crazier every single day. So just stick with me as I try to help you and me follow the money. Now, before we dive in, make sure to go to cooperconfidential.com to check out all of our new behind-the-scenes content, farm vlogs, all of the things, plus ad-free episodes. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, turn on that notification bell so you never miss.
Yeah, don't forget to do that to her video as well. It's in the description.
One of our incredible episodes. All right, so before we dive into this, there are just a few key takeaways that I think we all should be thinking about here. Number one, did Tim Walz, who is the governor of Minnesota, did he know about any of this? And if he did know, and if this was public information, why was this not disqualifying in his 2024 vice presidential race? And number two...
Exactly. Yeah. The biggest thing I love about this is either one, Tim Walz is retarded and got outsmarted by people with an average IQ of 68 to 72, or he's complacent in the whole thing. I don't know which is worse, but he needs to do some jail time.
Why? Why on God's green earth are American taxpayers footing a possible $1 billion bill for schemes done by refugees and immigrants that literally hate America? Because I'm sorry, that is exactly what is happening in Minnesota. Now, in order to tell you this story and help it make...
I think to receive any dollar of government benefits and welfare, you should be an American citizen, not foreign born, not anything else. You're born in America. It's, the system that Americans paid into, so if they need help, they should receive from it. People who just showed up to the country's door and aren't getting employment and are choosing to live in a very, very expensive city, or even a just city that's even average price, and all of a sudden, they're not working to make any money, and tax dollars are buying their food, it's giving them their free housing, and then they're just getting money donated to them because, oh, there's an immigrant and they need help. It's insane. And then they're driving a better car than you, living in a bigger house than you, eating more food than you, all because the government and taxpayers are giving it to them.
Sense in my own head as I break it down, I need a little bit of help. And so if you are listening on Spotify, I would recommend that you run on over to YouTube, because I am about to whiteboard the hell out of this story. Let's just dive in. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, we have right here Somali fraud. That is not racism. That is simply a fact, and you're going to see why.
Fact.
I also have it sponsored by Tampon Tim, our very own. Love that. So anyway, all of this entire scheme started back in 2020.
Culturally appropriate autism therapy. Well, that is one thing. The one singular note, I'm not okay with it happening. If it were their reason, I would accept their reasoning. If all of these people who we brought from Somalia are on these certain programs because their IQs are so low that they qualify for it. And if that's the case, that's fine. They qualified for it. However, it's also an even better argument against letting them in the first place. If they are such a low IQ individual that they are not going to be able to provide value to the United States, they shouldn't be brought here.
Because of one organization, and that organization was called Feeding Our Future. And Feeding Our Future was
Funded Ilhan Omar a lot
of government funds in Minneapolis during the pandemic. And what this organization allegedly did was they partnered with local businesses and organizations to feed hungry families. And these organizations and businesses, they volunteered themselves as feeding sites. And the government would then reimburse Feeding Our Future for giving out all of this food. Except, here's
should have had proof. Should have had to have proof of every meal to be able to qualify.
the thing. They weren't actually feeding children. I'm going to pull out my iPad here to read this to you guys. This is from the New York Times. State agencies reimbursed the group and its partners for invoices claiming to have fed tens of thousands of children. In reality, actually, it's more than tens of thousands. You're going to see that soon, too. In reality, federal prosecutors said most of the meals were non-existent, and business owners spent the funds on luxury cars, houses, and even real estate projects abroad. Abroad. I wonder where you are going to see in the
Abroad in Somalia, like, you know, that gorgeous, beautiful country they say it is, and then yet they don't want to go back there?
very near future. Anyway, all of this came to light in 2022, and 47 people were charged in what they are calling the largest pandemic fraud in the country because, get this, the people behind Feeding Our Future pocketed $250 million from the Minnesota government. But guys, the charges, the case, it did not stop in 2022 because this case continues to grow and new people have been charged with fraud up until just a couple of days ago. And as of now, 78 people have been charged. And after
That number from the 22 has almost doubled. That's kind of insane. And it also makes you wonder, if people with an IQ on average of 68 to 72, if they can outsmart the government for an estimated $8 billion, what can someone smart do? What is a smart person doing right now? How much are they pocketing? Oh yeah, it's millions as well because they're in the government. And they're just stealing your tax dollars.
Thanksgiving, when people started attacking Trump, saying you can't call Tim Walz a retard, you can't attack Ilhan Omar for marrying her brother, this is awful, you're being racist to the Somalians. Well, Trump's rapid response team on X, they dropped the whole list of fraudsters that have officially been charged in Minnesota.
All 78 of them.
All of them are Somali. Just saying, just putting that out there, that is a fact. Anyway, obviously, this case has been going on for years now, but I think that there was so much fraud during COVID just across the country that this kind of got pushed under the rug, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally. I think all of that will come to light in the very near future, but investigators in Minnesota very quickly realized that they had been duped. Now, you can also get duped in the good way, thanks to dupe.com. Now, here I am coming to you guys from the pitch black darkness of this colors off and free meat for life. All right, back into the story. This is really where I need my whiteboard because we have two more schemes that we need to discuss. Number one was one where they were supposed to be helping people in need who could not find housing. Now, the second one was a program that was supposed to provide therapy for autistic kids in Minnesota. Now, the Homeless Fund was part of a program that is called the Minnesota Housing Stabilization Program. This program in Minnesota, back in 2020 when it was started, it had a budget of $2.6 million. Okay, that's
Guess how much it got up to?
It's fine, I guess. Now, come last year, that budget had ballooned to $104 million.
Yep.
8 people have now been charged, and you might ask why? Well, it's because allegedly people were not actually getting the care or the housing that they needed. These organizations working with the Housing Stabilization Program,
people who frauded things people who already committed fraud once, committing fraud again? No way! It's almost like we shouldn't invite them in our country.
Pocketing the money. In one article about this scheme, it reads, the defendants targeted vulnerable people, many of whom were released from drug or alcohol rehab facilities, and signed them up purportedly to help them find stable housing. Quote, most of these individuals did not receive the stable housing they so desperately needed. The money was simply stolen. Okay, well, how did this happen? Well, in 2020, Minnesota was the first state, apparently, to leverage their Medicaid dollars to help people get housing. However, they didn't really put up any parameters of how this money would be dispersed, how you qualify, or where the money went, or how the money was actually spent.
Yeah, I remember a post I read like 2 or 3 days ago now, I think, and it was talking about the fact that some people who were arrested and caught for fraud were basically saying, well, they didn't put any stops on it, they made it really easy to do all this, and so I just kept taking more each time. And so, the first time they come in and they grab, 50,000. Slip 10 into my pocket, use the other 40. We need more money. All right, here, grab another 100,000. Slip 20 in my pocket and drop the other 80. Gotta keep the proportions exact, If 20% of every little bit of your funds goes right to your pocket and the other 80 just goes back to the actual cause, you can steal a lot of money and then you can enrich yourself pretty quickly.
Classic Tim Walz, as you are going to learn. Now, moving on to scheme number 2, autism. Now, I just have to say,
and remember, Tim Walz was almost our fucking VP. America, I always say America dodged a nuke when we elected Trump over Kamala. But we really dodged a nuke with Walz, too. Having him anywhere near the government, I think, is a bad idea. I think he needs to retire and be put in some old folks' home or in jail, dependent on if he was involved or not.
This whiteboard thing, I thought it was going to be so fun. I thought it was going to make things easier for me as I break down everything for you. No, I am sweating like a pig. I am crouching around, moving this thing in and out of frame. So just bear with me. We are almost done. And then I am never doing this again. Anyway, moving on to the culturally appropriate autism therapy. So this is the third scheme that we need to talk about. And you're going to see how all of this comes together. So this scheme was where a woman created an organization called Smart Therapy, where she was providing therapy and support to autistic kids in Minnesota. However, she and her partners overseas and here, she was pocketing the money that Medicaid from Minnesota was providing her instead of supporting the kids. And that money, okay guys, that was $14 million. So the dollar bills are just adding up. And get this, the way that they continued making more and more money and making the programs grow were by getting their friends and their families to enroll their kids in the program even if they were not officially or really diagnosed with autism. They were also hiring non-qualified family members, cousins, even teenagers to be the quote-unquote therapists. And yes, all of this is here. It's been written about now in the New York Times. Now, where this gets even crazier and has even more broad implications is that back in 2024, new research came out that said that 1 in 16 Somalian kids in Minnesota had autism compared.
Yeah, the reason we shouldn't be bringing random Somalian people here. They're too stupid to be in America.
With 1 in 53 of their other Minnesota classmates. People were like, oh my gosh, this is insane. What is going on in the Somalian communities in Minnesota? Oh, okay.
They're extremely inbred, which causes a lack of intelligence. That's what it is.
Okay, well, possibly. It looks like maybe not all of those diagnoses were actually real. They might have just been part of the culturally appropriate autism scheme. But I told you guys I needed the whiteboard for something because all of this now is going to start to come together. Because the founder of this therapy program allegedly also defrauded the government through the original Feeding Our Future program. So how she did this is that she allegedly...
Her name is Ilhan Omar, and she needs to go back to Somalia forever and never be allowed to leave that country. Because I think that should be her punishment, rather than sticking her in jail in America and having American tax dollars go to giving her 3 hots and a cot for the next 10 years or whatever we'd put her in for. No, I think she should just be forced to stay in Somalia. Passports revoked. Everything else for American citizenship or any other American papers revoked. She goes back. That's it. That's the only solution here. And she can take every Somalian with her.
Had her sham organization work with Feeding Our Future. She said...
And at this point, yes, I do mean every Somalian. Because at this point, Ilhan Omar, Omar Fateh, and the entire other group in Somalia there... They've taken so much from us that, yeah, I just don't want any of them here anymore. And yeah, they can blame it on the leaders that came in and fucked it all up, if that's what they want. So yeah, I think every single one of them should go. No exceptions.
Hey, I have an organization. I will feed kids. This will be so awesome. I'll feed autistic kids. I'll feed hungry kids during the pandemic. This will be great. So she filed a claim with Feeding Our Future. She fed no kids. She allegedly was supposedly feeding 200,000 children. She did no such thing. Allegedly. I have to keep saying allegedly because this is still an ongoing
What,
case.
was she feeding every child in the city?
Also one of the 78 people that is being charged in the original, the Big Bertha Feeding Our Future lawsuit. And with that, guys, I am putting the whiteboard away and we are sitting back down. So now we obviously have to ask, how...
Hey, imagine if Brett had done this like 6, 8 months ago while pregnant. having Brett, have the whole whiteboard and everything, just connecting the dots while 8, 6, 7, 8, 9 months pregnant, and yeah, I would have loved to see that. That would have been funny.
How did all of this happen? How did the state of Minnesota ignore this or not see that any of it was happening? Well, one of the prosecutors in the Big Bertha Feed Our Future case said that some involved became convinced that state agencies were tolerating, if not tacitly allowing, the fraud. Quote, no one was doing anything about the red flags. It was like somebody was stealing money from the cookie jar and they just kept refilling it, which is just a great analogy for government as a whole, in my opinion. So now, obviously, we have to ask the follow-up question, why was this metaphorical cookie jar continuing to be refilled even with all of these red flags? Well,
I think if you are using any dollar, anything more than one single penny of government funding, you should have to have a receipt for every single cent spent. If anything is missing, you're getting investigated for fraud, and that should go across the board. Every single department, every single area, and I bet you the biggest area they would find waste and abuse in is in the Pentagon for the Department of Defense or Department of War, because that area, I know for a fact that they're like, oh yeah, we have to spend this much more money or they'll drop our budget next year. So they just go and spend that money. That shouldn't be a rule. And in fact, I think if you have leftover budget money, it should be able to you should be able to say, yeah, I really don't need that, and it can go, into tax breaks back to American taxpayers and be like, yeah, we taxed you this much, but we didn't end up using it all, so here's some back. Or secondly, you take that excess and you go, okay, American people, it wasn't needed over here, but it is needed over there. That program ended up being needed more than we originally thought. So, and then you have a receipt for money subtracted, money added. And then receipts for everything would fix all the fraud.
What's important that you remember is that it was 2020. And in 2020, everyone was afraid of being called a racist, including the state.
Now nobody cares. Now nobody cares about being called a racist.
Minnesota. Here we go. Read this. In 2020, Minnesota Department of Education officials who administered the program became overwhelmed by the number of applicants seeking to register new feeding sites like the autism group, and they began raising questions about the plausibility of some invoices. Now, in response to Feeding Our Future, the organization,
oh yeah, never mind, I let my train of thought just disappear.
They told the state agency that failing to promptly approve new applicants from minority-owned businesses would result in a lawsuit featuring accusations of racism that would be sprawled across the news. Feeding Our Future later sued the agency, which continued reimbursing claims and approving new sites in the months that followed. I mean, this is so embarrassing. It is so bad. This is a state government that is cucked by accusations of racism. That is basically what is happening.
Yeah, and now if you're called it used to be if you were called a racist, they could destroy your job with it and get you fired and get you kicked off everything. Now, if they call you a racist, it probably means you won the argument.
That's not basically what is happening here. That is literally what was happening here. They were being threatened with accusations of fake racism because most of the people who were involved in these schemes, in the fraud, and who are charged now
were Somalian.
Were Somali. And guys, the same thing goes with the autism scheme. You've probably heard me saying the culturally appropriate autism center. Yes, well, the reason why they needed all of this money from the state, why they needed all of those new centers, all of the Medicaid dollars, the $14 million, were because they needed culturally appropriate Somali-focused autism centers. And if you didn't accept that, you were a racist. I mean, it is literally comical.
I don't know why we would need a culturally appropriate autism facility for Somalians if they're autistic. Why are we bringing them in our country?
In fact, this is something that even Somalians are speaking out about. In the New York Times article about this story, one said, quote, there is a perception that forcefully tackling this issue might cause political backlash among the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc. Okay, so instead...
Oh, also, if you are a Somalian who did migrate to the U.S. legally, and you are not sitting in Minnesota stealing money like all these other people, you should fucking hate these guys. You should be so mad. It should actually radicalize you against your own people, because they are making you look like the dumbest group of people on the entire planet.
Of protecting American taxpayers instead of protecting American citizens, you allowed yourself to be bullied. I'm talking to the Minnesota government right now. You allowed yourself to be bullied by race-baiting, racism accusation-giving Somalis who are allegedly happily taking advantage of your state and this country. And I mean, that just so perfectly sums up 2020. Now, I want to remind you all that all of this transpired and has continued to transpire under the administration of Governor Tim Walz. And Tim Walz cannot claim that he didn't know about this or that nobody brought it to his attention, because a fraud account allegedly representing 480 state employees has been trying to bring this to both him and Kamala's attention for over a year. Just take a look at this post from last fall. This is
I mean, also, it's no wonder that Congresswoman Melissa Hortman got killed by someone from Tim Walz if all of a sudden this amount of fraud was about to be uncovered by people, or was, being revealed, or was about to be cut off from being continued to give. It makes you really realize, Tim Walz should be in jail, possibly tried for murder.
This is in reply to a post from Kamala while she was on the campaign
or
trail.
at least conspiracy to murder.
Staff fraud reporting commentary writes, Ms. Harris, please listen to Minnesota state employees who work every day to deliver best services possible to our state and people who expect no less and pay our wages. Tim Walz has caused incredible harm to our state and agencies, retaliated against whistleblowers, against fraud. And then
back that up. If you see that Twitter post was on September 11th, 2024. Almost a little over a year ago. Like, that is nuts.
And then, guys, this week, now a year later, the same account...
Actually, a year and a quarter ago. Exactly 1 year, 1 day, or exactly 364 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, too. Yeah. Still hurts. It's been 3 freaking months. And I don't think a day's gone by where I don't see a clip of him and then miss him more. Anybody else feeling that, or is it just me?
Posted this as all of this stuff started going viral. They said, Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim know of fraud early on, hoping for a partnership in stopping fraud, but no. We got the opposite response. Tim Walz systemically retaliated against whistleblowers using monitoring, threats, repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of
and by the way, if Tim Walz gets reelected again next year, because he's up for reelection, if he gets reelected, I think everybody needs to go into the Minnesota and find out where the other fraud's coming from, because there is no way, after all this being released, that anyone in their right mind should let Tim Walz back in.
Partnership. We got the
should let him continue running anything.
DFL members and in indifferent mainstream media. It's scary, isolating, and left us wondering who we can turn to. They go on and they say, as staff, we firsthand witnessed and observed fraud happening, yet we were shut down.
I bet you they didn't want to go talk to Fox News about it, because everybody is, I'm guessing these are people who voted Tim and liked him and are all on the left and everything, and they're just like, man, can you help us solve this? And he's like, no, you're wrong, it's not happening, there's no fraud here, you are wrong, and you could lose your job if you don't shut up. And yeah, basically he just was, they just bullied him into silence until it could be too large to hide.
Reassigned and told to keep quiet. Sometimes more. Leadership did not want to appear to discriminate against certain communities and were unwilling to take action, such as stopping fraud. That would have been an adverse impact on their image. To date,
I'm sorry, you can discriminate against any community that deserves the discrimination. If a community steals stuff from you, if you go in that community and you happen to be locking all your doors and cars and everything and putting your stuff away much tighter, yeah, that in a way is discrimination, but it's built on a reason. If you go into an area where there's a lot of crime, a lot of murders, and you want to bring yourself a gun to defend yourself, that's viable. And yes, that's discriminating against everybody in that area, assuming that they're going to kill you. Same deal.
no single agency leader has been held responsible for their role in fraud. It is a structure created and maintained by Tim Walz, who has created an environment of interrelated agencies and institutions, including the media, that help foster fraud through retaliation and turning a blind eye in exchange for political gain in the form of high-power agency leadership jobs and other perks. Now, what is insane is that after this long, huge post was posted just a couple of days ago, this now viral tweet, this Minnesota fraud account was permanently suspended, which is something that had already happened to them back in 2023 when they were trying to bring all of this to light. Now, thanks to pressure from people online, this account has officially been brought back online, and they've continued to comment and share information that they have about all of these schemes. Now, another question that obviously is on all of our minds is, where is this money going? Now, thankfully, Chris Rufo, who has been investigating this story
it's going
since the
back
beginning,
to Somalia, the terrorist group Al-Shabaab,
and allegedly, this money
sister
has been
group
going
to
overseas
Al-Qaeda,
to fund Al-Qaeda-linked terrorist organizations. Listen to what Chris wrote. He said, our
Insanity.
for the first time that some of this money has been directed to an even more troubling destination. The Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group
And here's the thing, if Al-Shabaab ever makes a terrorist attack against the United States, that 100% is funded because of this fraud. And I think if it ever does happen, anybody involved in it should go to jail, and anybody who's not an American citizen should immediately be removed. No questions asked, no nothing, just you're gone, goodbye.
Shabaab. According to multiple law enforcement sources, Minnesota's Somali community has sent untold millions through a network of hawalas, I believe I'm saying that right, informal clan-based money traders that have wound up in the coffers of Al-Shabaab. Now, all of this is still under investigation. This just came out a couple of days ago, but Americans, specifically Minnesotan taxpayers, have a right to know where their hard-earned money, where their tax dollars are going, and how. Because as of 2023, in 2023 alone, Minnesota Somalis sent $1.7 billion overseas to Somalia.
Yep.
And where is the source of that money? I don't think that's coming from their own income. It seems like it's coming from this right here. So now obviously all of this has taken the internet by storm, and people are searching for answers. You know, did Tim Walz know? Did the Minnesota Attorney General actually pledge to help the fraudsters in exchange for campaign donations and then lie about all of it? Seems like possibly yes, based on the information that's coming out. We also have to ask if Minnesota and other American states are going to continue to let their citizens be screwed over by groups of people who will not assimilate, publicly declare allegiance to other countries, and who defraud taxpayers by allegedly $1 billion. And the last question is what?
Yeah, and here's the other one I'll bring you, is this here. Ilhan Omar's net worth, 2020, negative 65,000. 2021, 65,000. 2022, 115,000. 2023, 205,000. 2024, 30 million. What? No. Where did the other $29.795 million go? Where did that come from? Oh yeah, it came from our tax dollars. Anybody who legally is in the United States and pays taxes, your money went into Ilhan Omar's pocket, and that is why I think she should be deported immediately. Her net worth stripped from her to pay back the taxpayers that she's stolen from. And yeah, she should never be allowed to leave Somalia again.
Is Donald Trump?
Spoiler to my own personal viewing podcasts in the off time. Oh, that was it. Well, how about that? A good way to leave the episode out with that insanity for Ilhan Omar's net worth now. If you had never seen that image, that is an insane one. How do you go from negative $65,000 to having around 30 million in under 5 years without just stealing from people straight up? Anyways, this topic gets me a little upset, so I'm going to end this one here. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.